Hey everybody, the day is finally here. It's time for Alpha Launch Saturday. I got my glasses on for it. Let's see if my message is going to come through there. Alpha Launch Saturday. Let's get started. Howdy howdy. Day is here. Woo. I got my light show going. I got my Alpha Launch Saturday glasses. It is time to go. I've even got CTZN.1 all set up. And so all I gotta do is press that S button and we're ready to go with the first server. And so through today, we're going to be getting everybody signed up, setting up any new servers if anybody wants to set up a server of their own. Probably putting out fires because this is an alpha, so we're going to hit some stuff that goes wrong, no question. And then we're going to, on the stream, once we're kind of settled in, we're going to create some initial communities together and talk about which ones we want to be the kind of suggested communities in the sidebar for people that are first signing up during our alpha period, and that'll just be our kind of way of us coming to a consensus together before the actual tooling inside of the network is there for people to be able to, figure out how discovery works. So we are going to be sitting down together and picking a couple of communities that we're going to invest in as our first alpha set. Sound good? Sound good? Cool. All right, so if you want to create an account and join in with us, you go to this address right here. It's not going to work. The sign up isn't going to work until I press that launch button, but you can go to that website and that's how you will find, get into the application and get into the network. And then we got inside of the GitHub repo, we got all kinds of documentation and instructions about what this thing is. It's citizen, pronounced, it's CTZN, pronounced citizen. It's kind of like Twitter merged with Reddit. You got what we call Zens, which are your posts, 256 character limit, but then you could put as much text as you want in the expanded text, which opens up when you click on the thing. We got threaded comments, we got communities, we got social following, and we got decentralized hosting. And so if you are interested in setting up a server of your own, we have really detailed instructions in the repo here. I followed this morning and it all still works, and I'm really glad that I made these instructions because it made it way easier for me to set up the CTZN.1. So the instructions are all real good. So if you want to have your own custom, everybody's username kind of looks like an email, your person at server. So if you want to have your own kind of custom thing, that's how you do it. So, should we wait around any longer or should we get this thing going? What do y'all think? Can I get a thumbs up to press the launch button? I got one. I got two. Let's do this. All right, we're online. Now, I took the time to go ahead and set up my own account already, so I'll just go ahead and log in, and y'all go ahead and set up your accounts. Or use your own servers, however you like. And I'm going to need my keychain here. Here we are. Welcome to the CTZN Alpha. And this over here, this suggested communities bit, that's what we're going to be putting together today with each other. And I might as well make a community to get things started. We'll make the friends community again. Are we going to call friends? What are we going to call this? How about alpha? Okay, so now we got alpha testers at CTZN 1, and I'm going to set that up as our first. File bugs on the GitHub, please do. I'm going to set up the alpha testers group as our first suggested community, and we can all use that to start to find each other. A little bit of overlap going on there. Let's say it with the network. Did you enter your email? Check the scroll bag there, what's cooking. Citizenry.com is where you want to go to. So you entered your email. But it says should have required property email. Well, Paulo, if you could, try just going through the sign-up flow again. And I'll make a note for myself. Email getting lost during sign-up. So I'm going to set up a couple of folks that I know through the stream here as moderators on the alpha testers. Huh, really? That's interesting. Okay. We knew we'd be hitting some bugs. Ryan, have you got, oh, not that. Have you got your PTR record set up on your private server, on your own server? Because that's what you'll get if you haven't set up your PTR record. We got to do reverse DNS lookups currently. And if you're running your own server, make sure you're using the latest version of CTZN and you're configuring it properly. So that's all set, huh? Not sharing what your address is. Hey, JM. Yeah, if you, I can help you debug that if you can share your domain name with in the chat there. You're gonna have to work around the filter. Hey, Joshua. Yeah, so Yannick, try going through the sign up flow again. Sounds like we got some kind of data loss going on in the sign up flow. Huh, that's a shame. All right, electro.pizza. Let me see what happens if I try to do a reverse DNS on electro pizza. Yeah, that's looking wrong there. See, that should be coming out a IP address, Ryan. So I'd be checking into your. Oh, Jam, that's you. Sweet. Yeah, we're still getting the duplicate notifications there, so that's a note I need to make. Yep. Yeah, your reverse DNS lookup is still coming out wrong for citizen.electro.pizza. So you can test if it's working correctly by doing a dig-x on it, and should be an IP address showing up there. And if it's not, I don't believe it's properly configured, and so that's why that's failing. Paulo and Yannick, let me know if you are still getting that issue. And we may need to try to debug the sign-up form. Also, if you could, take a look in your DevTools maybe, if you're familiar with that, and see if you can't find any kind of errors in there. That might give away some of the problem. Cool. Yeah, we're getting duplicate notifications for sure. So we're going to have to deal with that. Hey, is that Peter Wang? It is indeed. So Miguel, go to citizenry.com and you can sign up there. Yeah, all right. I am +1 on getting the certificate-based authentication going on server-to-server communication. Oh, hey, Golda. Okay. Notifications button. I wonder if that's... Are you on mobile, Miguel? Yeah, Imp, when you say CW, you're talking about how... what's it called? Mastodon does the expanded text. Similar idea. Miguel, I was just asking if you're using mobile and that's why you're getting where the misaligned notifications are showing up, or is that on desktop? Interesting. Yeah, send me that screenshot. Okay. I'll check into some Firefox action. One thing I have run into is an ad blocker I had in Firefox was disrupting the WebSocket connections. So there's always that possibility. Though that's not quite what that sounds like for you. Huh. All right, thanks for sharing that, Miguel. Nice. We our spacing didn't quite work for you there. Oh, I wonder if that. Yeah, I don't know what to do about that yet. Because we don't have any custom formatting or anything. All right, Miguel, what is your, just reacted to your DMs here, what is your server? Could you try to give me the domain name through the chat without it triggering the, Well, Paulo, here's a question for you. Any unusual characters in your email address? So you're using test2 at Citizen Network, so that's on me. I mean, you should probably stop using the test servers. Oh. Oh, no. Yeah, I screwed up the... So I resized those instances recently, and they use dynamic IPs. The Citizen.1 actually use a static IP, and I had to reconfigure them real fast. Yeah, Golda, I do know about that. That is on my to-do list to fix that. Yeah, I didn't wipe it right away because something else that needs to happen is gracefully handle when your logged in home server is down. Oh, I mean, look, man, I wasn't saying that reverse DNS was good. I'm working with what I got here. Yeah, everything is cooking pretty good. The speed is looking pretty good, and all right, hang on. Click and follow, and a notification is also going to their profile. I mean, you're not wrong. So. Yep, we are finding those bugs. If you say you're hitting a Firefox login bug, anything? Yeah, feel free to share any details about that. Thanks for joining, Miguel. Glad we got you on. So I'm just going to appoint a couple of moderators inside of this group. And if anybody wants to be included in there, I'm not going to say an automatic yes, but I might start with Paulo, because Gotten to know Paula pretty well. And same with Peter. Some of y'all, I know you better by your YouTube name than your name on Citizen, so I got to figure that out. And we're getting some overlap in the header there. Display name bumping up against buttons in profiles. Okay, sweet. Bushnelli, you should see a link to the alpha testers in the sidebar there. I tested the band feature privately. I don't want to pull that on anybody else. Yep, sorry, Jacob, don't have pictures yet. Right on, Golda. Answer to your questions there. Number one, how do we explore the communities? And number two, can we post publicly and privately? On exploration and discovery and everything related to that, I want to make sure that, all right, Amp, you're down for the mods. So I want to make sure that the way that we are doing anything that kind of gets into the realm of algorithmic in a kind of a structured sense, in the rather than having just everything get dumped out that the server happens to know about, I want to set up communities and use the kind of programmable community system so that, basically there is a sort of governed process for what gets suggested. What we're doing in the meantime is just in this stream, we're going to create a couple of default communities and just have it embedded in the UI until we have the kind of governance system put into place. Hey, Stefan. Welcome, welcome. And then as for posting publicly or privately, we don't have private spaces yet. Got to think about how to do that. Might end up being just at-rest encryption in the post or something like that, but just haven't gotten there yet. So at present, everything is public. Mm-hmm. That's correct. Mobile doesn't have suggested communities UI. All right, so let me just hit you up with the link. And I'm on. It's, I don't know, Bushnelli, if you'll be able to click on that since you're on mobile, but alpha testers at Citizen 1. What's going on here? Okay, just a little bit of a lag. That's ugly. There we go. Good stuff. So Golda, that's two accounts for you, right, Golda? Your What's Cooking and Golda Velez? Currently, anybody can join any community. So we got this system right here of a notion of roles, and then these roles can have a set of permissions. And as we, pretty soon after today, one of our, right, okay, cool. Pretty soon after, Yeah, you'll have to just remember the community handle right now, and you're also going to have to type it in manually into the URL bar. Alpha software, right? So, like, yeah, we got this system right here for roles and permissions, and that's kind of the basis of, like, setting in these kind of more advanced rule sets that we are going to be introducing. Eventually, again, the goal for communities is for them to be completely programmable in a way that's kind of similar to smart contracts, but I'm probably going to walk away from calling them smart contracts because that's a little bit of an overloaded term. But it all does happen by interacting through data in the hypercore protocol, sort of chain, quote unquote. So one of the things I'm going to be doing immediately after today, so next week, will be beginning to add some more sophistication into the kind of rule set that is at least parameterized initially. Eventually it'll become programmable, but we'll just make it parameterized at first. And get in the ability to do things like invite-only groups or groups where anybody can join, but only certain people can post and things like that. So that's kind of answering your question from a little bit before. Oh, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, those buttons are overlapping. Gonna have to fix that. And as soon as we're all kind of settled in here, I want to get started on creating some more initial communities. Our ASCII art, what we really need is what we really need is a preview on post so you can know whenever your ASCII art's going to work out for you. And we don't yet have an edit button or anything like that. Oh, we got a period in there. Cool. All right, Imp, I have joined. So give me that ban. How far into the future am I planning on streaming the dev process? All right, I'm banned. As long as possible. I've been banned from this community. Sorry. So that works. Yeah, I'm gonna keep streaming as long as I can. Basically, it's up to how much time I got, but it kind of seems to me that I should just keep on doing it as long as possible. I enjoy doing it that way too. So I'll probably just keep on going until I can. At mentions are not yet a thing. No, don't have that yet. And unbanned. It's working. Oh, thank you, Golda. All right, well, while we're still on our high note here, why don't we start setting up some of our suggested communities? So we got a couple of folks that made already. Golda made Circles, which is for music and stuff. We got Bad Gardeners. Let's... We got that period in the URL. Auto-linkifying, picking up on periods, boo, thank you for coming, Jamie. Glad you're here for it. All right, so we got circles, we got bad gardening. I think those are both great for making our some of our default suggested communities. But you know what I'm going to do here is I'll create a post in the alpha testers. I strongly suggest live stream, and this has been I'll get out of here, Sam. This has been a really fantastic way to do things. I've quite enjoyed it. Oh, there we go. Yes, indeed it has, Moritz. All right, so that's our thread. So jump on there and link to any communities you think. Well, I understand the sentiment. I'll join, that's for sure. Yeah, I hit that too. Let's see if I can scooch back. Don't want to hit my lighting setup. There we go. That's a good idea, Lorenzo. Why don't I go ahead and create that? You know, I obviously believe that a community for kitty cat lovers is a great idea. And it'll be a lot better once we got pictures. I suppose you could always just link to some pictures for now. So CTZN is sleeping fitfully over there, and I do agree that we need to bring her in, but I'm going to wait until either she wakes up of her own volition or we're at the end of the stream, because it's best to let sleeping kit lie. But CTZN's, I think CTZN's is... That's a must-have. Whether or not that's Alright, so I'm going to add that as a suggestion here. Thank you, Jacob. All right, Anish, glad to have you on here. Let's see. Rust, I'd be down for that. Quotes, sure. Not you. You and could have sworn I followed Solo already. I know you got it. It's feature motivated, usage motivated feature dev. A little bit of a phantom notification there. Interesting. I'm gonna try not to worry about that. Definitely got duplicate notifications. That's occurring because of how the indexing structure works. You get communities indexing things for you, indexing notifications, and then you get notifications being indexed off of who you follow, and they are not deduplicating right now. So we got to figure that out. Well, is there ever going to be a citizen equivalent of a blue check mark? If so, it would be something different than how Twitter does it. You know, with Twitter, there's basically, you know, what that is kind of is like a SSL authority, certificate authority for a social network. And so if we were to introduce something like that, it would have to be more like how SSL does it than like how Twitter does it, because there's only one company that can issue those identity certifications. You know, that's not going to work for a decentralized network. So if we come up with something like that, we'd have to come up with something a little more sophisticated. That's a good one to suggest for the defaults. I'm afraid to click on the stream. Oh, shoot. So apparently there's already an app called Citizen, but not misspelled like we did. Ooh. IDs are case sensitive. That could be problematic. Let's plan to look into that. Well, that's a shame. What is the citizen at? A safety network. Can't believe I didn't come across this earlier. Oh boy. Yeah, Zeus, so you're not the first person to say that Firefox did that to you. There seems to be some kind of thing happening in Firefox where parts of the sign-up flow are like losing data somehow. So I gotta look into that. You might just try the sign-up again, and if that doesn't work, you might have to try signing up through a different browser. I gotta debug that. Boy, I don't know what to do about this. I'm just not gonna worry about it for the moment. They even got the TLD, and look at them. Aren't they fancy? That sounds like they had some VC funding. They were able to buy that. Still getting some phantom notifications. I wonder if I'm not... Yeah, I don't know what that is. Oh yeah, that's a good one. You know, I would hate to rebrand Citizen, especially now, but we may have to for all I know. Ooh, there it goes. I had to know that was coming. Thanks for mentioning that, Moritz. The Citizen is the one. Yeah, I don't know. There is definitely a part of me that's kind of like, you know, sometimes you can over pivot on concerns like that. And why not just YOLO a little? It's true. I generally try to avoid conflicts that are quite that close when it comes to applications, but well, unfortunately, when it comes to, if it ever comes down to trademark litigation, it is not separate enough. If they ever sued us, it'd be sticky. It'd be sticky. That's true, but it's pronounced Citizen. So, I don't know. Luckily for me, my brother's a lawyer, so I can get some free advice on it, but one of the things I've come to learn and appreciate about everything and when it comes to legal matters is that it's all about risk profiles, so to speak. You're just, nobody can ever tell you, are you going to have a litigation? They can only kind of tell you about what your risk profile is. You at risk of a lawsuit? Okay, yeah, maybe a little bit, maybe not. If there's a lawsuit, will you win? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Just don't be a U.S. company, yeah. when I was looking around for conflicts, what I searched for was CTZN. And it turns out there's a couple of things. There's some fashion stuff related to CTZN, and then there's a pro gamer named Citizen. Plays, oh man, what is it? The Rainbow Six game. Those two I was pretty sure were in the clear because it's in different markets entirely. But I didn't think to look around for just the word Citizen. So I don't know. Talk to my brother about it. I really like Citizen now, so I'm not inclined to rebrand. All right, so we had a little time to generate some ideas here. Let's take a look. We got no more blockchains. Again, I get it. I dig it. I'm a member. Don't know if that should be one of our suggested communities, though. Could do something like Netizen. We'll worry about it later. So then we got tabletop games. Somebody suggested a board games community. Created one already. I dig that. Food stuff. I guess food. I don't know. Don't know how many people would be into that. Furries, more than welcome. Don't know if I want to make that. It's got to be a little bit sort of mainstream. What we're going for here. Made of stuff around the dev process. That will happen at some point. We got CTZNs. I think that ought to be one. What we have so far is the welcome and the alpha testers. Let's go ahead and add CTZNs because, I mean, come on, it's just... What else? Quotes? Yeah, let's do quotes. That seems like a enjoyable one. What else we got? So we have a tabletop game suggestion, which is already this one here. So I'm going to go with this, board games. Rust would be an interesting one, as would be Gemini. I feel like P2P ought to be in there. Some of the other technical ones I'm not quite sure, maybe. I feel like maybe that's kind of in step 2 after we've got an actual system for these things. Yeah, sorry about that. I'll invest a little testing time on sign up for Firefox. Alright, what else we got here? What is this one? Malai. Machine learning and artificial intelligence. Yeah, I guess there's a kind of a broad question about, like, if we're talking about like tech stuff, like Rust, Gemini, P2P makes sense because it's kind of so closely connected to the vibe of Citizen. For some of the other tech stuff, initially, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just do it. You never know. Does anybody want to make the Rust one and the Gemini one? Interesting thought, Peter. It does come to mind as we're starting to look at kind of subset stuff, and somehow I get the feeling that you're bringing in some BBS influence. Not BBS. What is it? Help me out, man. What do you? It's not BBS, is it? News groups, yeah. That's what is the? Why can't I think of the name of that protocol? Yeah, Lorenzo, I agree. The case sensitivity bit, using it. Thank you. Ugh. I agree. We got a case sensitivity issue coming along. All right. Hypercore. Let's let the hypercore one be part of just P2P in general. NATP. Right. Yeah. All right. So if somebody wants to create a Rust one and a Gemini one, please go ahead. I don't want to be the admin of every one of these things. I dig the Texas idea, but oh, you know. There we go. See if we got a little crab. All right, Paul, can you give me the user ID for the Gemini one? Gemini enthusiasts. You know, you're not going to be able to do Unicode in the user ID, but you could for sure do... Okay, good deal, Zeus. You're not going to be able to do it in the user ID, but the display name should be just fine with... the display name. That should handle Unicode just fine. All right, so we got the Rust stations, and then you said you got Gemini enthusiasts. Did I get that right? Gemini. That's very on brand. Well, under threat of secession, we might as well get a Texas community going. Who wants to create the Texas community? And Paulo, you're saying it's Gemini enthusiasts. Is it at CTZN 1 or is it at a different server? What's going on here? Sure all this is working correctly. Python, sure. Yep, that's all looking good. I should randomize it. Anybody got that Texas one done yet? Oh, not text. Texas. Not yet. Oh, it looks like we got some duplicates already. Just text so far, Peter. And some alpha status nonsense for you. Oh, it's case sensitive. Gonna have to work on that. Cool. It's just gonna have to be ASCII cats for a little bit. You got a typo in there. Okay, thanks for making the issue. You're saying comment links don't seem to work. Well, they're working for me, it looks like. Well, thank you, Innit. Appreciate that. Sports makes sense. Comments, not posts. That's what I was just checking though, right? Like, I'm looking right... Is it in the notifications you're talking about, Joshua, or are you talking in the comment threads? Because, like, when I click on like that, it's working all right. All right, so we needed... we got one for Rust. We got one for board games. Ham radio? Yeah, all right, all right. Polly, you're just going crazy on that case sensitivity. You're just forcing me to fix it. Oh, yeah, Joshua, I am aware of that. Thanks for reminding me. Hey, Sully. We are in motion. Pop on. We're coming up with our default community suggestions. And we had all this agitating for a Texas community, and now I'm not seeing it, and I'm going to say that's also on brand. We Texans are an obstinate bunch. Alright, so I'm going to... go over to suggested communities, and we got the filter... That should randomize the order. Yep. Got so many, it's overflowing. Yeah, Amp, and I'll tell you what, if you are really interested in the underlying tech, the past live streams, of course, are great, and then also make sure I got that URL right. Yep. Huh. Solo, are you in the chat there, Solo? Could talk about this, but hey, Lucid. Good to see you. I'm already following you. The Humble Cultist. Okay, got that. Yeah, that podcast was fun, and for the first 5 minutes, Kit is just meowing like nuts. It's kind of embarrassing. I could not get her to stop until it was back when everything was frozen over, and I had to crack open the door and leave it cracked open to get her to stop meowing at me. Okay, cool. And that didn't... Yeah, alright, user ID, Linkify. Is it just a coincidence? Who knows? Alright, let's see here. Solo is admin. So... Solo, is it your alt admin that's having this problem? And what is up with that? Come on now. Forgot you can't chat on the live stream. I did notice that too, actually. It's interesting, though. It's at the tail end. I just was running into it not working in general. Yeah, all right. Thanks for that. I'll check into that, Solo. Can non-admin roles change the profile pic? All right, let me test that theory here. Yeah, emojis, I don't know what's going on with them. They are finicky. Because I've had situations, too, where they get stripped off. All right, well, I'll make a note to debug that. Gotta say, despite a couple of issues, overall, this thing's working pretty well. Let's take a look at our server process. Do I have HTOP installed? Probably just top. Let's see. Just doing fine. 24% CPU, that's... And not staying there, that's good. Only 6% memory. Out of, I think, 8 gigs. So that's looking pretty good. Could be lower. Could be higher. Let's see if we got any issues being logged here. No issues. Got about 86 databases active, which is cool. Okay, appreciate that, Zeus. Huh. Okay. There it is. And I think we have hit our highest concurrent viewers count ever, 33. Woo-hoo. Okay. Yeah, Benjamin, people are running into that. Let me guess. Are you using Firefox? Chrome for Android. Yeah, that is a bug that has only decided to show itself today, and I'm not too sure what's going on with that. You might try Chrome or Safari on desktop. Those I'm pretty sure seem to work. Gotta look into it. It seems like maybe data loss is occurring during the sign-up flow for some reason. Not sure why that is, so I'm gonna have to look into it. Some kind of a cross-browser problem. I'm gonna go ahead and push our community suggestions here. So we got a welcome, we got the alpha testers, we got the cat lovers of citizens, quotes, board games, P2P, machine learning and AI, Rust stations, Python, Gemini, sports, and ham radio. It's a good start. It's a real good start. And there's that phantom notification again. All right. Any more suggestions in here? Ooh, not that. There we go. Well, I think we have sort of settled down from our initial burst, and so now it's just kind of a matter of chilling a little bit, hanging out, making sure anybody that shows up late gets a chance to get signed up and everything. I imagine everybody on the stream, or most people on the stream, have heard me explain the technical details many times, but I could go through a technical overview of how all this works using Excalidraw if anybody is interested in that. Little refresher from ground zero. Ground zero from square one. Those basically mean the same thing, right? Anybody in the chat is up for that, then let me know, but if not, great then, let's do it. So, save this. I believe that's actually, I think I saved that one already, so I'm gonna leave, not bother. So, all right. We got 4, let's see. We got a couple of layers in the system here. We got the citizen servers. We got citizen applications. Yeah, lab. Not sure what's going on with that. It's something in some of the browsers. Just try Chrome or Safari. Really, you tried all of them. Oh man, oh man. Shoot. Could try some live debugging. I mean, what that sounds like is, for some reason, fields are getting dropped in the sign-up flow. Let me put a pause on this explainer real quick and apply what will hopefully be a quick fix. And then yeah, the browsers, I'm not sure if the browsers are quite telling us the full story in terms of, you know, it being a browser or something else. So let's see here. Make sure this one's online. All right. So head over to our sign up code. And what I'm going to do here is every time that we hit next or submit, I'm going to run this.capture values. And capture values is going to do the following. It's going to do this.query selector form. Let's see. What I want is a really convenient way to just enumerate all of the fields. Okay. Form.elements. Stop that. So let's just make sure that is outputting what I expect it to. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can see there is code that was already capturing it, but something seems off about it. I'm not going to worry about this part of it because that we know to be broken. And sign up. Okay. Well, let's deploy that fix real quick, see if that does it. All right, Stefan. All right, so I pushed that. That'll deploy it. So lab and anybody else having trouble with sign up, hang with me. I'll let you know when that is live, and we will give it another shot, see if that fixes it. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Yeah? Oh, kitty? Oh, kid's making some noise. Okay, interesting. It's possible that validation error was actually misleading. I just pushed a fix that I'll let y'all know when it deploys that may actually have hit the underlying issue. We'll see. Not yet deployed quite yet. All right, I'm gonna grab a little coffee. And then, that's good to hear, Solo. Gonna grab a little coffee, and then I'll get into that explainer real quick. All right. That thing deploy yet? Okay, so that fix just got deployed, so do a refresh. If you've been having trouble signing up, try again, let me know if that fixed it. All right. Am I framed and everything? Yep. So, let's start by just kind of enumerating the entities in the system, so to speak, to give us a high-level view here. So these are the top-level concepts, of course. You got servers, you got apps, and you got the data mesh. Servers are going to be things such as CTZN.1, or, you know, I think electro.pizza was Ryan's. And they are basically API servers. They don't have any front end at this point. I'm going to probably eventually get in a system where you can set a custom front end, but if you go to CTZN.1 directly, you'll just see the default, nothing there kind of thing. So these do not serve any kind of application or UI by default. They are simply hosting data, kind of similar to like a mail server, right? Then you got applications such as the one that we're using here, citizenry.com. And this is a single page application. Static, SPA, no backend. Whereas these are HTTP WebSocket APIs. no front end. And so communication is occurring with these things right here. And that is the basic initial topology to have in mind, right? Because citizenry is just a static SPA with no backend, it is super easy to fork to make your own application. Now, these are communicating with each other using the data mesh. So that is the Hypercore protocol, which is a peer-to-peer data network, kind of similar to BitTorrent. But they it's a little more advanced than BitTorrent. And the data structure we use is a lot like LevelDB. It's a key value data store, which is a peer-to-peer structure. You have a key, a public key, which identifies a database in this network. So every time I create, or anybody creates a user or creates a community, it creates a new one of these databases. That's actually called a Hyper-B, is what we call that. So it's actually a B tree internally, so Hyper-B. That is what stores the data. And so whenever there is a, let's take these two and take them down here and blow it up a little bit. So whenever there is a database, in this system, put it right there, give it a blue background. Whenever there's a database that's on CTZN1, it's got this public key, and that acts as its address, and we have these URLs that look like this, hyper pub key and the path. So over here, if I try to read a entry at some hyper URL, it's gonna go up into the network here. Here's our little action. It's gonna go up into the network and fetch the information over here, and then that will actually cache onto this server. And so you could think of the two, the Hypercore network is almost like a database caching layer, CDN, for publishing and accessing data. And when you're using it, it just feels like you're using a key value database. So that transmission over the network happens sort of automatically for you in the background on demand. And so that is our data mesh, right? And all of the information inside of the Hypercore protocol is signed. They use append-only logs in the background, which makes them have somewhat blockchain-y properties, which is really good for auditability. Can get swarmed across all the servers wherever. But the ability to write to one of these databases comes down to whether or not you have the private key, which can then sign new entries to be added to the database and synced out to other servers. And they can actually watch the databases that they're involved with to see whenever a change occurs and synchronize it optimistically. So there's a pretty efficient synchronization across the network on the Hypercore protocol. The values are not immutable, but that is because the interface as it presents itself, you have here, we'll say the append-only log that is behind a public key. So let's say this is my database. And you got these messages that are being added to these log entries, so to speak. They're being added 1, 2, and 3, and so on. So that's what's going on in the background, that append-only log. But on top of that, there's an overlay data structure, which is the B tree. Which will have things like profile equals some JSON. Or it'll be host 2 equals some JSON. Good deal, lab. Glad to hear that. And so whenever you write one of these things, it'll add an entry into the log, and then let's say I update it so that now the entry is item 2. And so that old version of the initial write will still kind of exist in the log over here, but the most recent version is right there. Does that make sense? So it's a key value store that's put on top of the append only log. And that means that you can actually access the history of the data. And this is designed in a way to be actually really efficient. This is some of the kind of novel work that the protocol creator Matthias Boos has done, where even if the log gets to be very long, thousands and thousands of entries long, it's actually quite efficient to find the most recent value for a given key value. You don't have to like download the full history or anything like that. So that's the data mesh that's behind this thing. Now you can actually access this network. In theory, it's a peer-to-peer network, right? So you could, in theory, access it without a server. We haven't quite introduced support for that inside of Citizen because right now Citizen involves, on top of the data mesh, DNS IDs, which are what those email-like addresses look like. So pfrazy@citizen.1, if you web finger that, it'll come back with db URL is equal to whatever. And so currently it's expected that everybody has a DNS ID. And so that's why you currently require a server to be involved in the thing. The server does a number of things for you on your behalf. It handles your DNS ID, keeps your data online, keeps your data accessible, maintains your private key for you to access from multiple different devices, and runs some computation for you. Now, within this, we got a variety of different database types. 2, in fact. We've got the, actually, we'll get that over here. Yes, indeed, Leslie. In fact, I got support for that on the roadmap because if you're able to, do it without a server, then you can do local first access, and it will be offline first, so friendly to outages and things like that. Good for things like conferences where the Wi-Fi is spotty, or if you're just trying to set up a network amongst people that potentially could be more convenient for just like a quick setup. Maybe you're syncing just over a non-internet connected Wi-Fi, something like that. So in the future that will be possible. And one of the other things that's slated for our roadmap is to, at some point when we have the infrastructure, to make it so that the private keys for signing your databases could actually be held by user devices rather than being held by the servers. So then anytime you make a change, you write that update on your device and sync it up into the server rather than having the server hold onto your private keys. And then you get better data ownership. So presently there are 2 kinds of user databases, so to speak. There is the Citizen, and then there's the community. These are both basically a subclass of user. And that's because they functionally underneath work the same way. They both have user IDs. They both, those user IDs translate to a Hyper-V internally. We've spec'd out how to do rehoming so that a user that's here could change their home server to another server. They would update their DNS ID until you have personal ownership of your private keys. That will also require key rotation. So the idea is that users, whether they're citizens or communities, can move between servers with no problem. Pretty key part of the decentralization, so that if a server ever decides, you know what, they're just not quite feeling hosting you, or maybe the server needs to shut down, there's a process for people to migrate to new servers. The way that data gets transmitted through this system, you have these entries in each of these databases, these key value entries, and communities won't have posts, but they will have other things like member records. And then you're going to have tables that are basically secondary indexes. A secondary index is just like a list of pointers to other information. So in the community, we have a feed index, right? And that is pointing to posts by the users in its community. And so whenever you're looking at the posts inside of a community, what you're looking at, in fact, is you're reading from the feed index, and then it's going to go over to the databases of the actual members of the community, pull up the actual post content, and assemble that into a list. And an interesting property of this is this indexing strategy is basically how information moves through the system entirely. When I talk about doing things on-chain, quote-unquote, what I'm talking about is basically having all of the activity, whether it be a request or an action or a post or anything like that, it gets written into these databases, into perhaps an actions table or a posts table or what have you. And then the indexing processes will pick up on the post and then index it, send it back into the index. So basically it's a bunch of databases that are all watching each other and reacting to new entries in the databases. And as a result, basically all the activity in the system is being recorded into the hypercore mesh. This is quite nice because it means that almost all inter-server communication is occurring through one mechanism, and that is the hypercore protocol, as opposed to them sending RPC messages to each other. The feed index should work even if you migrate the community user to a different server. That is the premise of what we're going for here. So as much as possible, we're trying to make the servers kind of a dumb hosting platform that are as unopinionated as possible. And moving from one server to another should be a trivial thing to do, whether it's a community or a user. It would change your DNS IDs, but otherwise from the outside it should look just about the same as before. We haven't implemented that yet, but all of the concepts are there, and we've planned out our data structures to prepare for it, so I'm fairly confident that it's only going to be a minor pain in the butt as opposed to a major pain in the butt. So I talked about in the Twitter thread, launching this thing, talked about how the goal is to get user programmability into this system. And so things like how these feeds operate, they're currently hard-coded into the Citizen servers, and my goal is to make it so that users are able to upload their own JavaScript, which the servers are executing in some kind of secure VM that is actually handling that logic. So that the communities are hyper-programmable, and I suppose we could also get that programmability into the Citizen databases, though not yet sure how that'll function. But the communities are pretty straightforward. And so that's the logic that, if you're looking in the code base, the Citizen code base, that would be under db/community.js, you have these indexer definitions where it's watching for schemas of this type for its members, and then whenever a change occurs to one of them, it's looking at the change and creating, in this instance, notifications related to them. So, is this a comment that's in my community? And is it actually a reply? And et cetera, right? And it's putting those into the notifications thing. Yeah, WebAssembly is a thought too. I don't know if the WebAssembly VM is necessarily more or less secure than, I guess it might be. I mean, that's what Figma is doing. they're using Figma is doing an amazing thing. They have a JS interpreter that was written in C, and they transpiled it into WebAssembly. They run it inside of a WebAssembly container so that it can run JavaScript. So what Figma has done is the true inception. You got V8. Inside of that, you got the WASM runtime. Inside of that, they're running their own transpiled JS interp. And then inside of that, the plugin code. So that is how Figma has solved it. Good on them. Well, Figma was a little bit bound by two things. They needed to have a way to, first of all, they wanted their plugin system to be approachable, I imagine. So you could create a JS to WASM compiler, perhaps. But the other problem they had was that this was not their original design. This was a hair-on-fire replacement after a number of plugins had already been written. They were up until that point using something called, it's by the Agoric people. It might be called Secure ECMAScript. And they have been trying to push a proposal to TC39 called Realms, which is sort of based on their work with ECMAScript, trying to make it so that you can run untrusted JavaScript in a secure runtime and not have to deal with all this. But it turns out that the approach of secure ECMAScript was vulnerable. And so they had to come up with a quick solution that didn't change the nature of the runtime because they had a backlog or a legacy corpus of plugins written in JavaScript. So this was their solution. So Benjamin, you're asking what happens if I make a multi-gigabyte post? Currently, it will naively attempt to download it. I'm not 100% sure at this stage whether or not Hyper-B will give us a nice way to kind of examine the size of the post prior to pulling it down. I have to look into that. There is no question the ability for the Hypercore protocol to say, to synchronize most of the data, but like leave out pieces. So that's a possibility. But I'm not yet sure in the Hyper-B structure if there's a way to like have some code in there that's like, hey, how big is this thing? All right, forget it. We're not syncing that. So I don't know precisely what the story is there. So anyway, hopefully we'll be able to cook up something simpler than this. Probably what we'll end up doing is using some kind of off-the-shelf JavaScript sandbox. I think there's VM2. But until we've had time to kind of put it through its paces or get something that we feel a strong confidence in, we will probably have the user programs require a special permission from the server on a user-by-user basis. So that until it's secure, we'll probably have a period in which you have to set up your own server or get permission from the server that you're on to run custom code as a user. So that's our high-level overview of this. Does anybody have any questions about how all this is functioning? Anything they want a little more elaboration on? Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why having a WASM interface to the user programs would be a no-go. But my inclination is to start with JavaScript since there's just a broad base of people who know JavaScript already. I'm quite surprised that this is working. After doing everything in kind of pure peer-to-peer topologies, which is just magnificently difficult to make work, it is quite refreshing to be using a hybrid design like this. So the avatars are currently the only kind of media we support so far, but it's using the same system. Can't tag users yet. Sorry about that. So the way that actually works is that user databases, I didn't mention this before, but they actually have an additional blobs hypercore. Which they point to in their sort of initials, one of their kind of top-level metadata messages. And so a hypercore is the append-only log that lives underneath the Hyper-B. So like Hyper-B is a data structure on top of hypercores. Hypercores are just append-only logs. And so this action right here. Okay, come on. And so the blobs get written out, just appended into this log, and then there's a table inside of each of the user databases which points to the blobs. And the reason it's done that way is so that the blobs, like with the Hyper-Bs, if you list like the Hyper-B stores both the keys and the values inside the same hypercore. And so, yeah, so like if you do a list of inside of a table of records, you're going to be downloading the values as well as the keys. And so you don't want to be sticking blobs in there because that would mean to just scan a table, you would have to be downloading all the data for each entry. By things that we know are going to be large, like media, we actually point to a separate hypercore that we can download from as needed. So that's how images are stored, just through a sort of additional database. Can't tag users yet, I'm afraid. Sure. So I was asked about the difficulties of a fully peer-to-peer design versus a federated design like this. I think it's accurate to call Citizen federated, but it's also kind of not. It's kind of a hybrid, peer-to-peer and federated. But I do think if I'm looking for a shorthand, federated is probably the right way to describe it. It's federated, but using a peer-to-peer transmission protocol between the servers. So, really glad to hear that, Sully. Pure peer-to-peer. Let's talk about this. I am probably one of the best qualified to talk about the difficulties of the two approaches. I have implemented pure peer-to-peer social networks about 4 times now. First one was Secure Scuttlebutt. Did another one on an early version of Beaker. Did another one on a later version of Beaker. So I guess 3 times. No mentions yet. Sorry about that. Not implemented. Now the thing about pure peer-to-peer is there is just no global awareness in the system. That is one of the first challenges of the whole design. So even though you're ostensibly part of a network, everybody is in their own little island. And your island is only going to grow to include the data sources that you follow. So if this user is following this user, their island comprises of this. Now, if you design the code to expand on the basis of, follows of follows, it can grow out along that line to include everybody there. But when you first start, until you have followed somebody, you're in an island like that. So there's an initial startup process that is a bit of a problem. Consequence of that is if anybody is talking to you and you're not following them, for instance, this user talking to this one, well, you're in your island. So you're not going to know what this person is saying to you. So you got a discovery, you got an initial introduction problem, no question. So naturally what you're going to want to do is cook up some kind of system for push-based discovery. And you can either solve that by sort of promoting one of the peers in the system to be a special peer with more kind of relevance than everybody. And everybody starts out by talking to them. At which point you're already getting into the vibe of what Federation is doing for you. And you can have more than one of these, same as with Federation. But if you're using this kind of an introduction peer, you're already starting to get something akin to a server topology involved. If you don't do that, you could try using a distributed mesh. So this kind of demonstrates the initial introduction there. Now you could do a distributed mesh kind of design where everybody talks to everybody. And they do so without any prior relationships with each other. This might be let's just do that to kind of indicate this mesh. This might be by DHT. It might be through a pub subsystem, things like that. Challenge you have now is a spam problem. There is no sort of authority in this model. It is an evenly distributed authority system. And so anybody can abuse the heck out of this push system to just spam as much as they want, and having any kind of mitigation against that is difficult. Some of the more advanced projects that are going along these lines try to introduce, whether this is a DHT, pub sub, or even a blockchain. What you end up doing in these designs is setting up some kind of, like the DHT one being like holochain. You end up setting up some kind of system where there's code that the participants in this mesh are respecting, they can apply kind of more strict logic to the system. Something along the lines of, if you wanted a rate limiting logic or something like that, you could introduce it there, or even smart contracts and things like that. They're feasible approaches, but they're difficult. They're very difficult to do this way. I'm generally somewhat wary of using a data mesh like this. And even in a design that is like a DHT or PubSub, if you're trying to bring in something like a smart contract, some kind of constraint system, you still have to ask yourself how to deal with a 51% attack, because consensus is, can be overridden as to what the current code of this shared mesh is by just having more users in the system. I don't know how Holochain is dealing with that, but of course blockchains deal with that with proof of stake or proof of work. Proof of stake, I think, is interesting. I'm keen to see where that goes in the long term. And if Ethereum is effective in deploying proof of stake, I might be pretty keen to integrate Ethereum in some way into our stack, if just as a kind of API connection as opposed to something that's embedded in it. But the approach that we're taking with Federation is basically using this model of having kind of nodes that are slightly more privileged that are administered. Now, that's on a kind of pure technical level, some of the things you're dealing with when you're doing P2P versus federated. But there's a lot of other considerations to consider. There's stuff like stuff like that. Do I have to download some novel and weird-looking browser? Who would ever do something like that? Does that novel and weird browser have a mobile version? How does multiple devices work? How do you deal with key loss? There is a ton of challenges that comes with doing a pure peer-to-peer topology, and very little infrastructure for a lot of these questions at this stage because it is such an uncommon pattern. You can't access it by a normal web browser. That's not great. If you can't, the reality is that most people will not bother. And also maintaining desktop software is very hard. I mean, with Beaker, one of the things we ran into is that at some point, Google decided, you know what, I don't trust any of these Electron browsers, and so now you can't sign into Google using Beaker. It gives you this warning saying, yeah, that's not a safe browser to use. I'm just having some fun about that, about the weird thing. So lots of challenges that come straight away whenever you're using pure peer-to-peer. These are what I like to call novel pains in the butt. And novel pains in the butt are not great for your new software project. So one of the reasons that I was inclined to architect CTZN with this sort of hybrid federation model is that it reduces the novel pains in the butt down to as little as possible, without necessarily compromising some of the premises behind the technology. For instance, we will be able to, without too much difficulty, move into a situation in which private keys are stored on user devices, which is one of the major goals of a design like this, of P2P, is to get people owning their data, their data and owning their signing keys. And we can get there progressively. The servers will be able to host it until we get to a point where we have enough of a maturity to the ecosystem and enough interest that we can put in the resources to get key ownership on the user devices, make all the apps that are required, solve the questions about key synchronization and things like that, and then the network just upgrades to the next stage. So by doing it this way, we're getting a huge benefit in terms of kind of progressively deploying the novel technology and avoiding any upfront novel pains in the butt. Now, there's a whole nother category thing to consider here. And that is basic computing mechanics. How do you keep data online? How do you process that data at scale? You want to interact with a community of 1,000 users. Is your device going to have to download all of that data and process it and store it? And et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is that in a peer-to-peer network, even if you are sticking with a purely peer-to-peer topology, you're going to end up needing what amount to supernodes, because at the end of the day, end user devices are not consistently online. They are not huge data, don't have huge file systems, huge disks. They got pretty good, but not the kind of scale that we expect out of a Twitter or a Reddit. They have a good CPU, but not so good that it can deal with having some kind of back end that is having to constantly download and synchronize and process data. And then you got one other concern, which is, shoot, I just lost it. What was the other one? Data storage, availability. Oh, yeah. Initial sync lag. That one really sucks. That is, suppose you solve every other question so an end user device can handle it. You still have this question right here. If the first time that you log in the day, you have to download all the most recent stuff, and that's not only 2 seconds, it's going to suck. You're going to be stuck sitting there going, really just kind of wanted to check my timeline, see what's going on, and it's still processing, and I have no idea how long it'll take. So these are problems that you run into with that design. And so much of the value proposition of the system is maintained by just leveraging supernodes in the way that we're doing. Well, you could argue that the light clients are and the archive nodes are basically what we're already doing. The servers inside a CTZN are pretty unopinionated, and their authority is detached from the network. That will be perfectly realized once the private keys are being stored off of the server. But the idea is that they can be dumb servers that are just basically acting as supernodes. They handle some processing on your behalf, perhaps. They keep the data online. They store large caches of data. But there's a reason why whenever you sign up here, you're joining communities. You're not joining servers. Servers are not hard bound to the content. Communities and users can move between servers. So we basically already have a light client and archive node topology in the system. That's sort of what we've engineered here. So thoughts on using the graph for aggregated indexes? Absolutely. Arguably, that's what we're already doing, where the Hyper-Bs of communities are aggregating already notifications and a feed for their own content, as well as comments and things like that. So it's pretty simple to imagine creating another kind of database in the system. And I haven't talked about how all the kind of data schemas are identified and what have you, but that's a relatively well-spec'd system. So you can introduce a new kind of database, which is designed to be an aggregator and just produce Hyper-B tables full of information that's aggregated for you to check out that spans lots of communities, lots of users, lots of servers, and so on. And because the way that, because Hyper-V is designed to do random access of entries in these things, you should be able to cook up a system in which you are querying just subsets of these aggregated databases relatively efficiently. Could you do a search engine that way? You're basically, what you're talking about is, in a traditional search engine, you are going to have the database co-located with the server, and you as a user are going to send the query over here, and it's going to access its database locally, and then come back with the result. If you wanted to create a kind of distributed search engine, basically what happens is the actual index is being hosted in the hypercore layer. And so you would send the query to that database that's in the hypercore layer, and likewise Google would be, or your search engine would be, writing entries into that shared database. Problem with that is simply that whenever you're running a query against a database, it's going to be a lot of round-trip reads and writes. Well, a lot of round-trip reads. So it'll be slower by nature because basically you're introducing the internet latency anytime you're outside of the boundary of the server. So rather than sending a query over here, you're constructing the query here and then doing a bunch of database reads over the internet. So there is a performance cost that may make a magical distributed, large aggregated database just a little bit ish. You may still want to have servers of some kind satisfying the queries for performance reasons. Noted, Ilya. Thank you. Hey, we got a forked front end already. All right, noted. Onboarding bots and IoT devices as users that share their data feeds. Love both ideas. Love both of them. Thinking retweet community channels. Would it be viable to add some public UUID per community profile object other than the HyperDB URL one could use as a Hyperswarm topic or broadcast a seed for side apps? So, excuse me. What do you mean by retweet or RT? I assume that means retweet, but RT community channels. What do you mean by that? And then, what are you thinking about the side apps? And I'm going to pop out to the bathroom real quick, so if you can just give me that reply, I'll be right back. Real time. I figured it was either, all I could come up with on that was either retweet or Russia Today. So real time. Nice. Yeah. So on that, somebody else also suggested having a WebRTC signaling API in Citizen. Yeah. Oh, little kitty. It's, yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. I haven't thought it through in a whole lot of depth to say like whether or not you just need the need a simple sort of WebRTC signaling API in every server, or if you need to get some distributed mechanism involved because maybe multiple users from multiple home servers are trying to join the thing. But it seems like a good idea, to be sure. And over time, you know, what we want to have is Citizen to be as generic of an applications platform as possible. So just kind of a generic social applications platform, which is, you know, largely geared towards the premise of social programmable spaces. So it seems like the kind of thing that would be a great thing to have. So yeah, I like the idea. I don't know when we'll hit something like that though. It's got lots of stuff to do before we get there, you know. But if you want to get that Clubhouse clone going, you know, that's what we're going to need. What's up, baby? Kitty catty. She's awoken from her slumber. So I guess it's time for the CTZN blessing. Oh, there you go. Right, I think, was it you, Lorenzo, that was talking about this earlier? All right. She blesses. The alpha has been blessed by Kit now. Cool, cool. Yeah, I'm totally open to talking about that sooner than later. Good baby. Okay. I see how part of me thinks I should just leave it like this, keep my lighting off. Once I got the glasses going, you know, it's... There we go. You know, I guess I have only myself to blame that everybody's using case-sensitive community names because I didn't get dashes implemented in time. That's going to be a... That may be a total pain to fix. The case sensitivity, I don't know. Because, like, database entries are getting written. So if you got the case sensitivity wrong, getting a lookup correctly, that's a bit of a pain. Don't know what we'll do about that. Hey, Lars. Welcome to the stream. We gotta get you signed up. Do you need instructions? All right. It's able to create a user. Most actions are available. Befriending, commenting, etc. The only thing that seems to fail is joining communities across servers. All right, let me try a dig real quick on citizen.electro.pizza. Well, Ryan, I'm still getting a non-IP address when I do a reverse DNS lookup. Yeah, regular dig should work because that's doing, you know, domain name to IP. Then so the reverse is, oh, I'm stupid. You know what? I'm sorry. I've been doing a reverse DNS lookup on the wrong electron, on the wrong thing. Hang on one second, Ryan. Lars, just head over to citizenry.com. And it should be pretty straightforward how to get started. Okay, this is what I should have been doing. I'm sorry about that, Ryan. I may have been giving you incorrect. Yeah, your reverse DNS is correctly set up. I apologize. Huh. And it's still telling you, if you go into your Citizen dashboard, well, let's see, we got an issue showing up here. And that's that. Let's see if I can recover from that. Okay, seems to have successfully recovered. Ryan, if you go into your Citizen dashboard, the TUI, do you see anything in your issues? Is it giving you that error there? You know, the reverse DNS failure there, or is it only showing up as an error whenever you try to do the join? All clear there. Okay. So the dashboard comes standard when you do an npm install global of Citizen and you just run Citizen. There you go. Yeah, try joining again. Let's see what happens. Are you using Docker by chance? No containers. Yeah, in fact, if you're getting that error, it should actually be coming from my server. Alright. Well, we're just going to have to spend a little time with that. We may just have to use client certificates. I was already keen to implement client certificates as one of the mechanisms we can use here. And if reverse DNS is just not working well enough, then that may just be that. Heather is making you drink Coca-Cola coffee. Oh, you're a bad kitty. You're a very bad kitty. Alright, let's see what this cat wants. 1 second. You want to play? Is that what it is? What do you want out? Nice. Don't think she wants to play either. Don't know what she wants. What you want? Crazy little kitty. Yeah, that's a known issue, but Lars, if you go to edit profile, you can change it there. For some reason, the sign up flow, I screwed that up. Okay, Ryan, good to know. Shouldn't need any more wipes. I'm going to try to keep everything working from here on out. Pretty much. And Lars, if you watch some of the past streams, especially yesterday, I got into this, but eventually we're going to be making the entire community logic user programmable, as in like you can upload JavaScript to run the logic behind it. In the meantime, until it's fully programmable, we will parameterize it and just add some features that are baked in. Invite only will be an example of the kind of thing we will introduce. You know, as the kind of top level example of what kind of programmability we want, something that Peter brought up is the idea of having a Harry Potter roleplay server, and I think that's a great idea. And if you know, the programmability would make it possible for like users to like cast spells on each other as a reaction to a post and things like that, and have status effects and etc. That's the kind of level of programmability I'm hoping for here. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Joshua, and that is absolutely the question here, is how this holds up as it grows. And my hope is, one of the ways that I look at making the community system a successful design is whether or not, is basically how long you can postpone Eternal September. Kind of like that, Lars, yeah. Whether it's a kind of a CLI interface like that, or like, you know, into the replies, or if it's actually UI elements. We'll have to kind of, I have not yet begun to think about how the programmable communities will surface their custom features by the user interface. That'll be a heavy challenge, to be sure. Not internal September, eternal September. And that eternal September is referencing, that actually comes from the old Usenet days. It was a reference to a point in, so basically Usenet early on was not super accessible. It was kind of a highly nerdy thing, shocker. And every September, a new round of university students would be introduced to Usenet because of the culture of the colleges, you know, would lead people to try it out. And so September became sort of notorious for an influx of new users who wouldn't understand the culture and the community. And usually by, you know, December or so, that would all have quieted down and Usenet gets back to the way it was. But then at some point, Usenet kind of went permanently mainstream, at least relative to where they were at the time, where new users were kind of flowing in all the time, and that became known as Eternal September. What that's referring to is just basically once the influx of users begins to exceed the capacity for the community to maintain its own culture. And suddenly the new users kind of come to dominate the culture more so with some new culture rather than maintaining what was good about it previously. In my opinion, after the GameStop thing that happened to Wall Street Bets, that's kind of the most recent example I can think of. It got super lame after all that happened, and I think it's because it expanded way too quickly, and then the grievance got factored in. So I think WSB survived for a long time, but they eternal September themselves with that one. So the question really is, for the success of any community, how successfully can you scale up before eternal September sets in? Interestingly enough, I would say that Twitter has been semi-successful at that. I mean, there's a very dominant culture in Twitter that has persisted for quite some time, and I mean, it's more or less capped out on its growth, so it seems to have stabilized. Now, whether or not that's a good culture, I don't know, but it certainly has, it certainly is one, and one that has maintained its definition for quite some time. So one of the things that I think about when I'm thinking about communities is how can we structure the thing so that if a community is successful initially, it's because it has created some kind of structure for people to converse or share things, and elevate interesting content to the feed for everybody that's involved, and etc. And so then once you've accomplished that challenge, if the community becomes popular and starts to grow, how do you maintain that success? It becomes much harder. And what I would very much hope is that programmability, along with concepts like roles and permissions and things like that, can create really sophisticated systems for what gets elevated and things like that can adapt to the community as it grows, and favor people who have had an established relationship with the community to preserve its culture. Why don't I try it? Yep, there it goes. Dang. Yeah, I still am aware of that. I'm just going to brag on you again, Michael Mullins. Hope you don't mind, but Michael has been giving, helping fund all of our work for years now, and has been massively generous, and I just can't thank you enough. Major shout out, Michael. I just bowls me over that you do that. And Michael actually lives here in Austin with me, and we get to hang out every so often. Not often enough, but that's what happens when you live across town, and I don't have a car and it's a pandemic. Are you still up north, Michael? Also say hi to Heather for me. Yeah, no kidding. Man, talk about truly Texas. We had that deep freeze that just knocked everything out in a week, and when it was over, it was like right back up to the 60s Fahrenheit. Pleasant days, like it had never happened. It's just there's a joke about Texas, this joke is in a lot of places, but if you don't like the weather, wait a day. And frankly, the thing that was most unusual about that freeze was that it lasted a whole week. But man, was it an unusual experience to be just, danger levels of frozen, and then all of a sudden, it's so pleasant. Weird state. Weird climate. guess currently the only way to know what communities there are is to use an admin panel. Comes to sunny. Oh, there's a couple of Texas ones. Oh man, there's the naming conflict. That's a shame. Gonna have to fix that pretty fast. Oh, we got a D&D one. That's fun. Admins only. No kidding, weather whiplash. Yeah, I messed up by not solving that case sensitivity problem. We've already got conflicts. I better get that fixed. It's just ASAP. Sounds like the eternal September problem is also the same moderation issue that modern day social platforms have. Corporations can't hire enough people to keep track of all the dirt. Strongly agree. And this is a reason why, like, there's not a... This is a Citizen CLI tool. It's the admin panel for anybody that runs a server. Isn't that fancy, eh? Pretty proud of this thing. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I don't have any kind of, like, unmoderated listings in the system. Currently, we're just hard-coding the suggested communities into the UI, but eventually that is the way that's going to operate is by having communities which basically are like special communities designed to control for a given server what communities are suggested. The only unmoderated spaces are person to person, if you follow somebody and you're replying to them and things like that. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, Ryan. I'm especially happy with how it looks because if you look at the live streams maybe a week ago, none of this looked this good. We managed to really upgrade the UI over the past week together. Oh, you're talking about the terminal UI probably. Yeah, isn't that fun? That's using Blessed, which is a Node.js module. I'm quite happy with it. Yep, Blessed, which is using incurses. Handy little thing. And the thing that actually got me going on it more than anything was wanting to have the issues panel. Oh, right on. Yeah, you can use that hole punching system and the Hypercore has by using the Hyperswarm DHT. Yep, that's the one, Lars. The kitty returns. What's up, baby? You little kitty cat? Usually I can calm the beast by giving her wet food, but ran out of wet food and grocery delivery has been backed up since the freeze. Hopefully I'll get some tomorrow. Oh yeah. Your little vicious kitty. Yeah, isn't it? How about I use Hypercore Protocol and Hyper-B to allow users to store images associated with their decentralized identity and that require authorization to access. At-rest encryption. Almost certainly. The way that Hypercore operates, if you don't know the public key of a Hypercore, you have no way to access what it contains. Even if you're passively watching the network traffic, it is hidden in the in transmission, and so there is a way that you can do private data in the Hypercore network by simply hiding the public key that identifies the Hypercore. But that's a little bit of a challenging approach, I think, in the long run, because you're talking about every time you have a topology of privacy that you want to create, you'd have to create private Hypercores for everybody involved, which you really just don't want to do. So I believe in the long run we're going to be needing to get at-rest encryption involved for private information. And so then you would just have database entries which are encrypted. I believe that would be sufficiently secure for this kind of stuff, even though you would be transmitting it, the encrypted form, to everybody, you know. And somebody could sit there and spend some time trying to break the encryption. Fingers crossed that's not a feasible thing, but who knows? I mean, personal chat with any user. So that kind of gets into the question of what Lorenzo was talking about, which is getting like WebRTC signaling involved, perhaps. Or, you know, so we could do it that way, so it's like synchronous. Or we could do it by using encrypted messages or encrypted entries in the databases. Don't know yet. Probably not the near term, but certainly an option. Probably with chat, even though it seems to lend itself very nicely to WebRTC or similar, the questions that end up arising around synchronizing between devices and having like message notifications and things like that may mean it's better off to actually use encrypted entries in the database to make synchronization easier. And the hypercore network should have pretty efficient transmission so that it comes off feeling real time. And then you'd have like your chat logs and all that. Do I think Gravatar style different avatars / profiles for different PG ratings could work? So one thing I would say is that I am a little bit inclined to come up with some new way to do default avatars, because it would be nice to have visual differentiation with communities and things like that until they've set their avatar. So I might like to get some automated generation of default avatars going. Now, as for like PG ratings, haven't really touched on that yet. I haven't touched on like NSFW markings or things like that. So we'll have to get into that, I think, at some point in the future. I don't have any direct thoughts about it yet. When Citizen has the ability to move users between servers, will the usernames still be the same? Nope. If you change home servers, because it's like an email ID, you're going to have to change your last name, so to speak. So I'm currently pfrazy at Citizen1. If some other server gets set up, like citizen.com, my user ID would change. When that happens, there will be records and what have you published to indicate the rehoming occurred, and so it should be possible to redirect to the proper one. The DB URL is not considered sensitive data, except, in fact, you should be a little careful sharing some of what's in the hyperspace panel here, because if you open up some of these things, they will show the database URL of private databases, and you really don't want to share that, because there are private databases involved. They're not synchronized over the network. They're kept off the network, so it shouldn't replicate, but you still want to keep the public key of private databases private, and we do have private databases for the server and for users. They're used to store things like account details that are specific to the server, so they're never meant to get onto the network, so it wouldn't be a total disaster to let those database URLs get out, because the server will not share the data on the network, but still wise just to keep them private. So I guess the real answer to your question, Lorenzo, is it depends. Is the database supposed to be private? They're kind of like read capabilities, if you're familiar with capability systems. So other than the stuff that we know we're going to be putting in here in the near future, does anybody have any feelings about, a feature they really want us to prioritize? What are we missing? What would you really love to see get done? Yeah. Nothing is currently exposed that would be dangerous to allow to be crawled. So yeah, what features are image upload? Seems a pretty obvious one. I mean, we can't get our memes going or our cat pictures going until I get that done. So, I mean, come on. And actually, most of the code's done for it. The real question is how we're going to deal with sort of designing your posts. You know what I mean? What if you want to add rich text formatting or put an image in a particular spot, things like that. I've got some thoughts about it, but I haven't come to any conclusions yet. But might just do the image uploads as, kind of like an attachment system and automatically kind of place them and things like that. There is not any bot detection currently. What would you be thinking about there, Leiden Zero? Currently, if there's a bot that's doing some nonsense, you would certainly not follow them, and as they get into communities, you would ban them. But any kind of really focused attack would be, something that we don't quite have mitigation for. Mentions and pings makes sense. Now, the question about likes, we actually have code for upvotes and downvotes that are in the system that is currently disabled. And one of the questions that we're grappling with is, do likes or votes create the kind of environment we want to have for folks? Are they something that creates toxicity? Part of me, it kind of puts you in a performative mode, to be sure. Whenever likes get introduced, now you're posting for the likes. Not yet, Mike. But also something that I want to get introduced, invite-only servers. Likes are certainly less toxic than retweets. And on communities, I would actually like for the kind of actions that can be taken on a post, such as a like, to be part of the kind of programmability. Downvotes can be weaponized. It's a little bit of a tricky situation because at the same time, sometimes you need downvotes to maintain community culture. Does Miniverse do like emoji reactions? I was always kind of partial to the idea of doing textual reactions. But they're a little bit of a pain UI-wise. Yeah. Emoji reactions ain't a bad idea either. I'll be thinking about it, because I do feel like it is missing something without it. Lorenzo, I'm in general agreement about that. I mean, like, kind of what I'm talking about is a per community option. And so doing it on a per post basis could also make sense. Sort of depends on how much we want the communities to be able to override those kind of decisions. That could be a setting, though. Pinning works. It's like a like, but only important to a user who has pinned said content. It's like bookmarking. Yeah, I mean, if you recall, originally likes in Twitter were bookmarks. And people were using them like likes, and eventually they separated the two concepts. Yeah. And there's currently no algorithmic design. It's all chronological. So Lars, that's what I call rehoming, and it's not implemented yet. It's slated in our to-dos. We've laid the groundwork for it, but haven't implemented it yet. Something else might be nice is a comments feed, just to kind of see all the conversations going on, but who knows. But yeah, currently rehoming is going to involve both having to change your DNS ID as well as doing a key rotation, so it's going to be a little bit of work to get done correctly, but should be doable. Yeah, so Leslie, that's an interesting question. Certainly there's a degree to which clients have freedom to change presentation how they like, but there's also some things to consider about that in terms of shared understanding of what's going on. If every client, there can be cases in which there are significant differences in how two clients are presenting things, and that could lead to bad experiences. It's entirely possible. So there's actually some tight parameters as far as you can customize before shared reality gets lost. And so that's not to say that you shouldn't do it. You can always come up with ways to do things. I mean, the follower count, for instance, that data's there. You could present it if you wanted to. The client just hides it, the one that I've written. So if you wanted to fork this thing and add that in, there you go, So yeah, there's definitely some presentation control, but there's also consensus around, a shared reality that you got to consider as well. For things like likes, not that important. But that is one of the main motivations as to how the data schema design works, where data schemas are fairly strictly defined and not meant to be arbitrarily extended. Unless, of course, there's a explicit extension point, but generally speaking, not supposed to. I'm getting some ghost notifications here. I wonder if there is a notification and I'm just not seeing it. No. All known item types. And look at that infinite scrolling. Proud of that one. Is it possible to get a list of all server nodes? You could possibly accomplish that by just on a server by server basis looking at all the known users and looking at their domain names, but at present I don't have any means by which I could know of all the servers. Even if you were to try to crawl the DHT to learn that kind of stuff, the DHT isn't informed about the existence of a server node. And that is a feature, not a bug. That's decentralization for you. If we wanted to get some kind of a server listing, which eventually we will do in the signup flow, right? That would be something that becomes a matter of citizen governance, which will be something that we all engage in together. Yeah, we really got to get some kind of reaction system in here sooner than later. Well, should we call it a successful AlphaNet or Alpha Launch Saturday? Got a good couple of bugs, but nothing terrible, nothing world-ending. Very happy about that. Is that the same server node? Is what the same server node? If you pasted a URL in there, probably got. Woo! Just answer your question real quick, Lars, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you. Feeling good. I think we chose the right time. Didn't wait too long to get started, you know what I mean? There's definitely a lot more I would love to have implemented by now, but, you know, if you wait too long... Yeah, sorry about that. Thank y'all very much. Thank y'all for being a part of this. Live streams have been the best part of this whole thing, in my opinion. Word. Cool. Well, I was so happy that y'all could be here for this. Let's try to keep that streak up, Paulo. Who knows? Keep on joining in on the live streams, the daily live streams here, and we're going to keep on developing this thing out and making it more fun for folks, more useful, and etc. I'm going to take tomorrow off. Got to take your days off. Kick back in on Monday. Try to fix up some of these bugs. And then kind of dig into the updates to the community stuff to start adding some sophistication there. Maybe throw in a couple of features real quick. Maybe we could get like images and some version of likes in real quick. As always, reach out to me if anything has gone amiss or if something horrible happens, which is always possible. I look forward to continuing all this on Monday. Really awesome to have all y'all here. So I'm going to play myself out. Have a great rest of your weekend. And see you on Citizen. Later, everybody.
Citizen. Citizen.